Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Um, my name is Vivian, and I am going to be recording the video. The client that I chose was case number 5, the 65-year-old who is female identifying, and her partner of 36 years died 3 weeks ago of a long-term illness. The presenting issues in the case are that the 65-year-old client had just lost her partner, and she's now grieving the loss of her partner and her best friend. Uh, she's gonna go through the same emotions and feelings that anyone who has lost their partner has, and just because she is female identifying and she is part of the LGBTQ community, it does not necessarily mean that she needs to be treated any different. So the fact that the counselor that she has been dealing with for hospice and she is and her aren't clicking, it definitely does seem normal, and I would almost say that I think that anybody who has lost somebody can be upset and might not necessarily be clicking with anybody because she's grieving her loss and she might not feel connected with anyone. So I think that's part of the presenting issues. I would address the issues presented by acknowledging the fact that she is hurting and that she is allowed to grieve and allowed to feel these ways. I would address them almost in layers necessarily. I acknowledge and validate her grief and address her concerns and thoughts appropriately. I'd explain to her that her feelings that she has are normal and that she can and is allowed to feel the way that she does. I would not treat her any different because of her sexuality or the way she self identifies and the choices that she's made to live her life the way she has. I would not tell her this part, but unfortunately, there are counselors that are not comfortable in dealing with the LGBTQ community, and they oftentimes can come off as being uncomfortable and insensitive. And it's not necessarily done on purpose, but it does sometimes harm the way they treat the community differently or people in the community differently. And they must be able to acknowledge things in themselves and know that this is the type of community or the type of population that they don't feel comfortable with. Therefore, they need to separate themselves and then either educate themselves or just provide skills for themselves in order to treat anybody from the LGBTQ community appropriately. And if they have any concerns for themselves, then they must seek out their own education and deal with their own issues before they deal with somebody like that or somebody that has been dealing with such a big loss. The resources that I might recommend to her are grief support groups. I have found that there are grief support groups that deal with loss in the LGBTQ community. There is a group called the Gay and Lesbian Community Bereavement Group of South Florida, and this group helps people dealing with grief and loss. They help people like the client to move forward and to cope with their loss. There's also a group. There's also the National Resource Center on LGBT aging, and that's another resource that I'd probably give to the client as well, and it'll help them understand that it is difficult sometimes to open up to their family and friends, and sometimes their family and friends just don't understand, especially if this client self-identifies as a female and you don't necessarily know the full background of her story. And there are people there that are trained and are culturally competent enough to deal with this. Also, because she's a 65-year-old person, she might see herself as somebody from the older community, and they might not feel very comfortable in opening up to people that are younger than them or that might not have the same life experiences as they do. Therefore, we have to find different resources and maybe different support groups that deal with the older aging community, which might be difficult to find, but I was able to find these two as well. And just anybody else that might feel comfortable, or any other counselor, one-on-one counselor that she may find as well. It's not necessarily geared towards LGBTQ, but just somebody who is strong enough and understands grief despite her sexual preference or the way she self-identifies. The knowledge and skills that I think I would need are things that are insensitive and things that are not helpful to people that have lost someone, not necessarily part of the LGBTQ community, but I don't necessarily have many skills when it comes to dealing with grief, and I don't want to be insensitive, and I don't want to say something that is not going to be helpful or get them upset for any reason. I need to learn how to help through the whole grieving process and what the actual process is. I understand that there's different stages and there's different ways that people grieve, and I need to be I feel as though I need to be stronger in that as well. And then how all that ties into the LGBTQ community, if there is anything different that I need to understand, or if there is anything different that I need to learn and educate myself, that's something that I feel is important. But other than that, that's it. Thanks guys for listening. I look forward to seeing other videos. Bye.